Hey, this is Mickey, and I wanted to introduce you to our sponsor today, and that is Brick Block, a very interesting project that's launching its ICO on May the 9th, and it's short and sweet, only 6 days long between May the 9th and the 15th, so you've got to get in there, kids. And it's a platform with the goal of making the world of investing easier, cheaper, and more transparent. The BrickBlock platform allows for tokenization of all different types of assets, and the one that really caught my eye was real estate. So if you look on their site, they've already got 3 projects that they're looking at. One in Wiesbaden in Germany, 8 units, a big sort of development of apartments, 2.85 million. One in Bolton, United Kingdom, $8.3 million, 293 units, and one again in the UK in Tranmere, 50 units, $8.7 million. And basically, what you do is you invest, and they buy the property shares using Ethereum. You receive POA tokens, which represent the benefits of legally owning property, and you basically then earn passive income on the rental, which is great, right? It's kind of like proportional to the shares that you've invested. They also do coin funds. They'll offer 2 types of coin funds, CMF coin managed funds and CTS coin traded funds. And BrickBlock will be the smart contract platform that initiates the transactions between the coin fund and the buyers, but you will own them. BrickBlock will not own them. You will own a share of those. And they also do what's called ETFs. They tokenize ETFs, and they're like baskets of assets, stocks, commodities, or bonds, and they're passively managed by a trust company and traded on the stock exchange. So again, that will be tokenized, and you can buy shares in that and then earn passive income there as well. So I think it's fantastic. I think it's one of the better ICOs this year. And you know, they score very highly on ICO Bench, which is 4.1 on the expert rating, so that's a really good indicator. And it's got a great team, and it's got a market-ready product. What more do you want? And if you do want more, well, they've got some great partnerships as well. JAX, JAXX, one of the biggest wallet ecosystems, they got a partnership with them. And Consensus Due Diligence, a leader in the smart contract auditing and block investments. Again, the token sale is May the 9th to May the 15th. Now, you've got to go to BrickBlock, BRICKBLOCK.io. And just get your tokens, kids. Thank you.
This the life with Mickey and Willie.
Strange life.
With Ty and Willie. With Ty and Willie. Ty. This the life with Mickey and Willie.
Hey, this is Mickey. I want to apologise for the sound issues today, particularly on John's channel. We had a few problems with the Zoom call, and yeah, we hope to get it rectified for the next caller. Apologies again. Hey, welcome to This Strange Life. I'm Mickey, the conduit between the motherfucking freaks and the geeks.
And I am Willie. Nice to be with you guys again. Nickname is What You See Is What You Get.
And our third wheel today, as usual, is
Jim Bob.
Is that all you want to say today, brother?
Well, I used to be the Brian Red Band of Thailand, so I'm seeking a new identity at the moment.
All right. Suggestions, put it on a postcard and send it to Jimmy at Bangkok, and he'll get it to me. So I am super excited today. As you know, we're a new podcast, and we're growing all the time, and we're trying to get better and better guests on. And today's guest is someone I've followed for a long time. I've read his book. I've heard him on multiple podcasts, and he's the cool dude. And welcome to John Brisson. Hi, John. How are you doing?
Thank you, Mickey and Willie, for having me on. I doing well. I'm John Brisson from fixyourgut.com. I've also been on the HigherSide Chats and Grimerica, both getting into conspiracy too as well. some people call me the gut health expert. I don't like the term guru. But yeah, thank you both for having me on.
No, it's great, John, and thank you for coming on. I know that we were so close to this whole thing being cancelled because you got some issues with the wet weather, right? Where are you? North Carolina, mate? Yeah.
Fayetteville, North Carolina, right outside of one of the world's largest military bases, Fort Bragg.
Okay.
Oh shit! So
yeah, I'm
it's
pretty sure they're messing with the weather somehow.
Yeah, man. Some government weather modification is going on there. I'm sure. They heard that we were about to do this podcast, and they they tried to put a stop to it, but they will not. They will not defeat us.
Yeah, I mean, Nikki, as you probably know, it's weird. Sometimes when I do interviews, my internet will go out or Skype will go out and stuff like that when you get down to the real crucial information.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's specific voice analyzing analytics that are built into software. When you say something you're not supposed to when you're being recorded, they cut you out or something. I don't know. But yeah, it does seem to happen. I guess maybe they must have tried to throw a storm and make my power go out too. With chemtrails and HARP technology and cloud seeding and Lord knows what else they got. Probably could have thrown some wrench so to stop everything. So.
Yeah, and I've heard a couple of your appearances on THC, the HigherSide Chats, and a few other people have been on there as well. And you're right, at some key moments when you're just discussing like the key points or just getting right down into the weeds, it's more often than not that you'll get some kind of break in the audio, or Skype will suddenly mess up or something. So I think there's something to that, John. I think that the man is out there trying to stop us spreading our message. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right, Mickey. I mean, when I was on Grimerica and I was saying the different names of the people that were in the Council for National Policy, for example, every name I mentioned, every time I mentioned a name, there was an audio drop.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a friend of mine, a great Canadian, who's part of the Grimerica Discord group. He's actually got audio recording of that happening. So it's really interesting, when you're saying all this information and you start getting drops. Or, for example, just out of nowhere, I'm talking to Greg Carlwood on THC on my second podcast, and my internet not my internet, my computer just completely shuts off. Just shuts off for no reason. I had no issues beforehand, just completely off. And I was like, okay, well, that's new.
Yeah. Well,
it is interesting when it happens that way.
It's almost like on CNN. If anybody said anything anti-Hillary, all of a sudden there's beep. We've lost the connection, ladies and gentlemen.
So John, I know you've got quite an extraordinary and really touching history, and I think that kind of led you to kind of pointed you in the direction that you've gone in. Is that fair to say? And can you just give us a little sort of brief history of John Brisson and tell us how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, Mickey. Yeah, I mean, I guess like a lot of people are listening. They've had family members in their own personal life who were ill, or they were ill themselves. So for myself, I was born extremely premature. Back in 1985, I was born 3 months premature. I was supposed to be born in December. I was born in September instead.
Shit.
So yeah,
so you're a baby, 1985. So
yes.
you're 30. Oh shit! So you're the same age as Willie, but 5 years younger than me.
So yeah, I back then they didn't even, I wasn't, my mom had systemic lupus. They told her to abort me because didn't think that she survived the pregnancy, or they didn't think I'd survived the pregnancy, and my mom wouldn't because she was a staunch Catholic. And so when I was born, I was actually born dead. They had to resuscitate me, I did end up being okay through the most part. I mean, I was up in the UNC Chapel Hill for a long time. They haven't even built the neonatal unit in Fayetteville yet, the city that I live in, raised in now. So they finally had built it and opened it up, and they transferred me back there. And I actually still went to UNC Chapel Hill a lot. And they were running some special program where they were monitoring children who were extremely premature at the time. And I don't have any recollection of any tests that they had done to me or anything. I can't even get hold of my medical records from that time period. I asked my grandpa about it. He says that, I don't know, they would bring in a whole bunch of psychiatrists and, and psychologists and everything and doctors, and they would look over me. So I have no idea what it was about. I just find it interesting that I can't get my medical records from Chapel Hill. I tried to, when I talk about my son Abel later, I tried to get my medical records when he was up there and I wasn't able to. So I was sickly most of my life, had asthma, had allergies. My appendix burst when I was around the age of 13. Almost died from that. I went a month in the hospital, lost a whole bunch of weight and everything. My mother died from lupus when I was 7. And my father was one of the first people in the United States diagnosed with hepatitis C in the late 80s, early 90s. And he actually was for the first trial for ribavirin, pegylated interferon, done by Duke University. I think it was around 1996-ish, 1997. So I grew up with him being sick a lot and helped take care of him.
So how did your father contract that, John? Was he an intravenous drug user or?
Yes, he used heroin in the 1970s.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a minefield then.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, why it took so long to manifest itself virally, I have no idea. But yeah, they think he must have contracted it around then.
Wow.
Because he wasn't using, to my knowledge. He used later when I was in high school when they got him addicted to OxyContin and everything because of his pain of his liver.
Yeah.
Healing. And he decided to start mainlining Oxy, which was
Whoa.
fairly young, but I mean it's fairly common now.
Yeah.
In the United States. But back then it wasn't. It was just starting. And I don't blame him for it because he was in a lot of pain and everything. But yeah, I mean. I remember, taking care of him when I was in high school, and he'd throw up all the time and just be sick and and he eventually had to quit his job and his mind going from the liver failure and from all the drugs and everything. And that was like, when I tell people this, I lost both my parents. My dad later died when I was 18, and everything. But right before I went off to college, and I later had a mental breakdown, and came back. But people tell me I have such a hard childhood, because I lost both my parents and I was sickly and everything. And, my dad was a drug user, but in reality, it wasn't necessarily the case. My grandparents helped raise me. Even though my father did later succumb to drug use later on, when I was around the age of 14, to 18, he was an excellent father. I mean, he loved me. He took great care of me. He expected a lot from me. And actually he was a big conspiracy theorist.
Nice.
And I used to watch X-Files and Sliders with him growing up.
What was some of his favorite conspiracies?
He believed at the time a lot in UFOs, and then the JFK assassination. There wasn't really a lot. When 9/11 happened, he didn't necessarily believe the official story for that either. He didn't know as much as we obviously know now, but he really didn't believe in it full-heartedly. The story, of course, of the basic narrative of it being, terrorists and stuff like that, Osama bin Laden and everything. But yeah, he had that mindset. Now, I didn't at the time. I was a neocon. I loved Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh. I got my politics from my grandfather. I thought my dad was crazy. He was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, for God's sakes, So I was just, most of the time I was just like, whatever, Dad. But it turned out later he was right.
Yep.
And I wish every day I could tell him, hey, you're right and I was wrong. But I remember listening to Coast AM with them at night, Art Bell.
R.I.P.
Yes. And it's funny how I look back on everything and I was like, well, damn, he was right. I'd look back and he'd sometimes be worried that the flower van, down the street was listening in to him. Looking back at it now, that he might have been right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so anyway, everything was going. After my father died, I had a mental breakdown. I came home. I met my wife, and I kind of adjusted everything, and went to work. one of my favorite jobs, like to tell people, is I worked for the federal government for a short period of time, where I dressed up as a role player down at Fort Bragg as an Iraqi role player, and got paid $15-16 an hour to shoot fake AK-47s at the soldiers and stuff like that, and role play and everything. It was a pretty cool job.
That sounds
I
fun.
did that for a couple of years. Yeah, it is. It is. You get to play cards a lot. And, the only thing that sucked is being out in the middle of nowhere, out in Fort Bragg at like 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of winter. That sucks. But hey, if the soldiers could do it, so could I. So everything was going pretty well, and until my second son Abel was born back in 2011. He was born with a condition called congenital myopathy with excess muscle spindles, which was just the name. He was actually 6th diagnosed in the whole entire world with it at the time, and my wife had a difficult pregnancy with him. She had polyhydramnios, which means she had carried a lot of fluid in her and everything. She blew up like a balloon, and he didn't move very much in the womb. Around 32 to 33 weeks is how we knew something was wrong. But his heart was still beating, so we knew he was alive. We just didn't know exactly why he wasn't moving. And then when he was born, he had a lot of contractures. He could barely cry. He was so weak, and we now knew something was wrong then. For sure. And they whisked him off to the ICU. And so we went to the ICU, and they were trying to figure out what was wrong with him. They put him in the NICU, eventually, the neonatal ICU. And it was funny because one of the doctors who was there, he was actually the doctor that was there when I was admitted years ago when the NICU at Cape Fear Valley had first opened up. And he actually remembered me. Which I thought that was crazy.
Wow.
He was still the pediatrician there, and the other doctor, he actually, I'm not going to use his name, but he actually told me it would probably be better off that if my son had died, in the womb, because they thought he was going to suffer a horrible death where he'd eventually get weaker until he died. Of course, I told that doctor to pardon my French, but to fuck off.
Yeah. Well, at that particular time, John, you don't need that negative energy, do you? You want everybody to be collectively sort of willing your son, back to health with positive energy, and you just don't need that fucking negativity, do you, around at that fucking time, man? It's just disgraceful.
Yeah, it shocked me, Mickey. It shocked that, a doctor would say such a thing. I noticed that a lot. I noticed it now with my grandpa who's 92, and there's not much they can do from him. And sadly, not much that I can do from natural health till he's so old, They pretty much to get to that point where they just wash their hands, and some people could say United States is because of Obamacare or because of the insurance companies or whatever. But, they pretty much did that with my son. And so we took him to Chapel Hill, and they were trying to find out what was wrong with him. And there was one, they sent a muscle biopsy to Mayo Clinic, and there was one doctor who happened to seen a case similar to it out of the HRAS family, which they thought his condition was related to, that had seen muscles similar to his, so he diagnosed him. So they told him pretty much that he was going to die, and there's nothing we can do. So my wife and I talked about it for a couple of days, and we figured, we didn't want him to suffer, so we'd take him off, because he was on a ventilator. For breathing, and we didn't want him to suffer anymore. So we came to the decision that we were going to take him off the ventilator and let him die in peace and dignity. And right when we were talking about actually making that discussion, he actually spit the ventilator tube out. Wow. And he wasn't supposed to be able to do that. He was supposed to be very weak. His lungs should have atrophied. Even if he spit the tube out, he should not have been able to breathe with the tube out. His throat should have had the capacity or being able to spit the tube out, but it was a miracle. He did. And he actually could breathe better off the ventilator than on. And the doctors had no rational idea of why that could have happened in the slightest bit. So I was shocked. I'm myself a Gnostic Christian, but I've never really seen a miracle like that, really, in my own personal life. And then there's no rational reason why that should have happened. There's no scientific reasoning for it. So we took him home, and he was doing well for a while. He was starting to gain weight. He was starting to be really reactive. He was getting older, and eventually the nutritionist that was at Chapel Hill, she said that he wasn't gaining enough weight, even though they didn't want him to. And we had him, we're playing around with putting him on my own formula that I'd made him, getting him off of the conventional formula because he had a G-tube. And lo and behold, she kept pushing it and pushing it. So eventually she goes, look, he's not gaining weight like he should. You guys are not feeding him right, even though the nurses said that we were, okay? And, if you don't, I'm going to contact the hospital social worker. We're going to get CPS involved. I should have told her to screw off at the time, but I was much younger. So I got scared and I said, fine. So I let them, put him fully back on their formula and increase the feeding. Well, he started aspirating into his lungs, coughing up the feed because he was getting too much of it. He was coughing up into his lungs. And he kept going back to the hospital with the aspiration pneumonia, but they weren't saying that. They were just saying it was his muscular disease was getting worse. The CMES was getting worse. His lungs were getting weaker, which was not the case. And so eventually they had to trach him and put him on a vent because he had a really bad aspiration episode where he stopped breathing in the hospital. So it took a couple of months of him being in Chapel Hill, but eventually I finally convinced him that he would get better when he was in the hospital because they fed him less, but when they sent him home and we increased the feed, he'd get worse. So eventually I finally convinced him that it wasn't his condition. It wasn't that he had some sort of infection. It was that they were overfeeding him. So they sent him back home and he actually started to recover. You guys, he was actually doing better. And he was actually got to the point where he was about to get off the ventilator again when all the other kids of his condition, and I was giving him supplements, I was giving him PQQ, I was giving him ubiquinol, I was giving him magnesium, I was giving him sun. All of the kids with his condition prior to him died before about the age of 2 with heart failure from mitochondrial dysfunction. And he was about to turn a corner. He's about to get off the ventilator. They said that would never happen, that his lungs were too damaged from the aspiration, and I'd reversed that. And lo and behold, because of all the trauma he had done to his lungs, he had a pulmonary embolism, a free pulmonary embolism, and it went to his brain, and he died.
Oh man! And how old? And how old was he, John, when he passed?
He was around 3. He was almost about to be 3 years old.
Okay, right.
So what was what's your biggest few takeaways from how the hospital handled that, and what? I don't want to say what would you do differently, but what were like the few 2 or 3 biggest things that you learned from that experience about the medical industry and health and all that?
Well, I learned. Something I already knew. Practicing. Being a naturopathic author and counselor, is that most doctors are entrenched in strictly Rockerfeller Western medicine, and his only advocate was actually his geneticist, she was from China. Her name was Dr. Fan. She was a neurogeneticist. She had 2 doctorates. And when I first met her, she told me there was nothing I could do about my son, that he was going to die. And she was rude. And I realized later that she wasn't rude at all. Like, she became his biggest advocate. I completely turned her around. Actually, at the end, she wanted me to actually go. She was trying to get me a full paid scholarship to become a doctor at UNC Chapel Hill. Like, I changed her that much. And she became his biggest advocate. And I learned that most doctors are entrenched, unless they've had some sort of outside influence. Like she talked about, her family back home in China, they tackled cancer using Chinese herbs, and people had gotten over cancer. They had gotten better and stuff like that. She's seen it with her own personal eyes. But majority of the other doctors, that were strictly in Western medicine, they had no idea about that. And they'd be so entrenched in their views that, I had a doctor tell me that giving my son, which was Dr. Fan had prescribed him, 200 milligrams of magnesium would make him so weak that he could barely move, because when they gave IV magnesium to women who had preeclampsia when they're pregnant, that they become so weak that they can barely move. And I was like, so I'm going to give my son something that's prescribed to him to help him use the bathroom, and you give a woman, many grams of IV magnesium sulfate to make a hypermagnesium response in their body. She's trying to equate the 2 things together. Her ignorance on magnesium was astounding. you know? So these doctors, they don't get any education on nutrition, and even the nutritionists don't even understand nutrition.
Yeah.
You know, so you start understanding that, you know, what do they really know? They go and they learn, and then you might get a good doctor who stays up with the current literature, you know, but most doctors don't. They just go based off really of what their computer tells them, and what they, even if they have continuing education classes, they still don't keep up on the most groundbreaking research. Because if they did, you know, researchers have known that Mycobacterium avium paratuberculosis, which is this mycobacterium that's found in ruminant animals in their dairy and in their meat, is the main cause of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Researchers have known this for almost about, I want to say almost about 20 years now, even maybe a little bit longer than that. But doctors still treat it as only an autoimmune condition.
Wow. Okay.
And there's enough literature. I mean, I've taken, you know, people in my own personal life, for example, my son's occupational therapist who had ulcerative colitis. I mean, he was bleeding. He was actually about to start thinking about getting surgery. You know, you give him a diet, as, you know, he drops all the ruminant animal products. He eats nothing but, you know, fish and chicken and turkey. And you have him, you know, take some herbs for anti-inflammatory like boswellia and curcumin. And lo and behold, in a couple of months, he goes completely in remission.
Yeah, and I think...
And the literature's all there for it.
Yeah, John, I think that when doctors go through their training, the sort of the dietary and food part of that is very small, isn't it? It's almost like non-existent, and I think that what we put in our body, it must be, if not, it's got to be one of the most important things, you know, for our health. What we put in our body in terms of food, and it's just a wonder that doctors aren't paying more attention to this shit, you know?
In nutrition, to me, from an untrained eye, it seems like it's something where we're always getting new information. The best information in nutrition seems to be changing. And so if you're not keeping up on that, if you took a class and you were a doctor, you became a doctor in the 1980s and you're practicing medicine in 2018, you know, if you're not really keeping up on that type of stuff, like your information is so old, so out of date. And then when you think about these doctors, like they probably don't have a ton of time to be doing that too, you know, living their lives. I imagine that you're getting a lot of doctors that are really not very informed on things like nutrition.
I mean, you're right. It's sad of how little nutrition they actually get, and then they require nutritionists to back up nutrition when your average clinical nutritionist, what even they believe in nutrition is ludicrous. You know, where they say that like eating whole grain bagels, for example, is healthy.
Yeah,
you know, and you gotta, you know, just gorging on like 400 to 600, you know, grams of carbohydrates a day, you know, is healthy as long as it's whole grain. You know, it's just ludicrous. It's just, it blows my mind that the way even, you know, clinical nutritionists look at it, even doctors, you know, they don't understand, like they don't, even though they're supposed to have continuing education classes, like my grandpa was a pharmacist and he'd have to go learn about drugs, you know, but the funny thing is the continuing education classes that he had to go for drugs was given by drug representatives,
right?
You know,
yeah.
So of course they're going to
trying to sell their products,
their drugs. Yeah, and not tell any negative drawbacks or anything like that, you know. So it's just crazy how you would think doctors, if you're always looking for a good doctor, you want a doctor who reads, you know, books in their field, a doctor who looks at the newest studies. And you know, they may not be perfect, but they're going to be better than most.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say, John, as well, it's not one or the other. It's not Western medicine or alternative medicine. It's a combination of the two, right? It's not black or white. The two things can be used in conjunction with each other to great success. You know, it's not like all kind of woo-woo homeopathic stuff or, you know, taking government-approved drugs. I think it's somewhere in the middle, right? There's got to be some sweet spot there.
Oh, 100% agree. For example, if I get in a car accident, you know, natural medicine or homeopathic medicine may help facilitate my recovery. but it's not going to save my life. And that's where conventional medicine comes in, of its ability to stop for trauma-based medicine and for even diagnostic-based medicine to some degree. That's where its strong suits are, very acute things. Where they drop the ball are very chronic things like cancer and autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. That's where they really mess up. It's all about symptom control for them. It's
symptom
all about,
control. That's a great way to put it. Symptom control.
It's all it is. It's all about symptom control. It's not about actually trying to get a person over the disease. And it's sad. I mean, that's like, there needs to be a balance between the two. I've always said that. I've always said there's good doctors, there's good nurses, there's good researchers. I'm not against conventional medicine per se. I just think it should be done better. Just like I think naturopathic medicine should be done better. There's a ton of supplements out there that are scams. It's the same with a lot of drugs out there. The risk versus benefit reward of them is not worth it, and that's the problem is no one ever holds either side really accountable. There's a lot of frauds on both sides, and you got to shift through it, and it's always evolving. And so there needs to be a balance between the two, and you'll see a balance between the two more in like Asian cultures and more in European cultures.
Yeah.
But you don't really see a balance like in the United States, for example, or Australia or Canada. There's not so much of a balance. It's more strictly conventional type medicine.
Is there a movement at all to combine the two, like in Western countries at all? Like, is conventional medicine, are they really kind of looking the other way or thumbing down their nose at homeopathic type stuff? Or is it starting to work together? Are there some like thought leaders in the space that are trying to combine the two? And do you see it moving in the right direction?
It's a great question.
Willie,
I guess, maybe in some circles you'll see that. You'll see doctors who are MDs who become natural, do more what they call integrative medicine. But if you look really on the standpoint from what's being taught in the schools, Willie, what's being taught in a lot of these conferences that doctors go to and everything, it's still the same stuff. It's still the stuff that's been around. They call it Rockerfeller-based medicine for a reason.
What does that mean? Could you define like that term in history there?
Yeah, so way back in the early 1900s, there used to be two different types of schools when it comes to medicine. You had more of the allopathic medicine, and then you had more of the naturopathic medicine that you had today. So you could go to both types of schools. They were both accredited. And a doctor, could technically work both, and there wasn't any strict, MD, AMA way of looking at it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what came from that is that you're not going to get a lot of money that way. If you got to streamline it, you got to put it all together. So they claim that John D. Rockefeller back in the day, he paid. I think the guy name was Abraham Flexner. He paid him to visit all the medical schools at the time, and he released a specific report called the Flexner Report in the early 1910s that pretty much called for the standardization of medical education and said there was too many medical doctors, there's too many schools, and pretty much it led to Congress eventually forming the AMA and forming standard conventional accreditation of schools and pretty much getting away from naturopathy type medicine and only accrediting conventional type medicine. It all came from good old John D. Rockefeller.
Yeah, well, he's got his fingers in everything, isn't he? He's got his fingers in back in the day in education as well, and in all these different institutions that we rely on. It seems to be all directly affected by these kind of old families, Rockefellers and the Morgans and the Rothschilds.
Yeah. Well, there was sort of a vacuum there where the world really sprung forward there in that part of the 20th century. So those guys with a lot of power were really able to wield it from what I can tell.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can also look at Rockerfeller too. I mean, majority of the early medications were petrol based. And Rockefeller did own Standard Oil, so you kind of got to look at that. I mean, acetaminophen today, Tylenol, it's still produced from coal tar. So I mean, I wouldn't touch acetaminophen with a 10-foot pole. It depletes glutathione. It's definitely not a drug that I recommend, if all possible.
What is that, John? I've never heard of it. I've never used it. What is it? I mean, I don't use a lot of conventional medicine. I've had antibiotics for about 13 years, so I'm a little bit behind on this. What's acetaminophen? What's that?
Painkiller.
Is it
acetaminophen or
Tylenol?
Yes, it's usually used for pain or fever. It works for fever for resetting.
Tylenol. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. But it works as it works generally for pain on the TRPV receptors. It doesn't work as a COX inhibitor like aspirin or most NSAIDs. So it generally works on TRPV1. If I remember, that inhibits pain signals. It also seems to inhibit endogenous cannabinoid. I think one of the metabolites of Tylenol works on anamide, but it doesn't really work very well for pain at all. And the problem with Tylenol is that it depletes glutathione through its detoxification. And it's very harsh on the liver, the cytochrome P450 pathways and everything. So it's not worth the point. The point, it's not worth the taking it at all. And it's interesting when I did the research on Tylenol, because I was just curious to see about it, of how it affects the body so negatively. I mean, does it seem like you want to take something that's a derivative from coal tar, it still is today, that still has like a benzene ring? I mean, it's really toxic for the liver. I mean, you can easily take, you could take a whole bottle of aspirin. I wouldn't suggest it, but you'll probably survive it. You take a whole bottle of Tylenol and not get to the hospital to increase glutathione, and you're going to die in a few days. I mean, once it reaches a point where you're out of glutathione and glucrination, the liver can't, you'll die. I mean, it only takes 3 to 4 grams of Tylenol to be deadly taken at one time.
And
maybe a little bit more than that. So.
And isn't it interesting, John, that they're now demonizing things like kratom and obviously cannabis and CBDs and stuff like that? It's crazy, these natural things that we know help us, and there's a lot of research and there's a lot of evidence just from people using it, saying that it's really helpful to them. And you got Sessions, or whatever his name is in the US, putting his greasy little fingers on all these things and squashing them out. And and as you say, you're talking about something that's derived from coal tar and petrol or something, and yet that's okay, but the plant that grows in the ground is bullshit, and that's gonna ruin your life, and that's the demon, that's the devil. It's just so fucking backwards, man. It riles me up.
Yeah, and then yeah, I mean, me too, Mickey. I mean, how they take also, they're taking the natural stuff like marijuana and they're synthetically making cannabinoids, Marinol, the drug Marinol. They're actually doing that. They're taking a lot of these natural herbs and they're synthetically producing them into drugs that work very crappy. They're just crappy drugs.
Right.
And they don't work as well as the natural plant or the natural chemical does. It's crazy how they're doing it that way. But I mean, they're originally using. There was actually a derivative, if I remember, before Tylenol or acetaminophen, which was actinilinide, and it was used in the late 80s, and it was extremely toxic. I mean, it was causing like cyanosis, and people were dying from it, and everything like that. And actually, acetaminophen is the metabolite from actinilinide. So they just took the safer metabolite and still gave it to people, but it's still a problem. I mean, they don't recommend taking any more than 3 to 4 grams. I think 7 grams is the 7 or 8 grams is a deadly dose of permanent liver damage, possibly, from taking Tylenol.
Shit.
So it's just interesting how they were like, okay, so, and they do that with a lot of drugs. The main drug is deadly, but the metabolite seems to be less deadly and serves a purpose.
Hey, this is Mickey, and today's next sponsor is Kaz. We are regrouping, we are rebranding, we are reinventing ourselves. A quote by the great thinker Socrates goes like, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." There is motive for paraphrasing Socrates today. For all good reasons, the platform you know by the name of CopyCo is going to be revamped and renamed as Kaz, C-A-Z. As all the stakeholders of this platform know, CopyCo has commenced in October 2017 with an aspiration to launch an e-commerce platform backed by the blockchain and cryptocurrency by the middle of 2018. We wanted to become the biggest e-commerce platform in the crypto arena, but we were struck with huge blows and narrow bottlenecks, and it did not let us grow any further, not as much as we wanted. Not to blame anyone, but our setbacks should be attributed to a couple of issues like technical glitches with wallets, and then suddenly our lead developer walked out of the project on his personal reasons. He had personal reasons to do so, but we, the core team, did not lose hope, and instead of abandoning the project, we all pushed forward and put our energy and resources on rebranding the platform to Kaz, basically the crypto Amazon. Kaz, crypto Amazon, Kaz, yeah, that's cool. The coin swap had been successfully completed, and we are proceeding for exchange listing. You will hear news on the listing soon. The test platform has been released already, and the main platform is getting ready for the grand launch in June 2018. We hope this is going to create huge buzz in the market and something exciting to look out for in this quarter. Stay tuned for more updates. John, I just want to pull it all back then. So I'm a massive fan of probiotics, that good bacteria. Like you, in the past, I've suffered with anxiety and depression. It sounds like yours was a lot worse. But isn't it interesting that you go to the doctors with these complaints and they don't at all, they don't even touch on what's your gut bacteria like, are you exercising, what's your nutrition like, but most importantly of all, I think, is the gut bacteria thing. It's funny that, isn't it? And I think that would help everybody. I mean, since I've started taking probiotics regularly, my life, my mood, my energy, my everything has got 10 times better. And it's just interesting that doctors still don't even, it's not even registering, is it? It drives me mad, John, honestly.
No, I mean, it does to me too, Mickey. I mean, the doctors, they much rather give out, antidepressants and antipsychotics and anti-anxiety medication like they're candy, instead of telling people, to get more sun, because
sunlight,
exposure, proper blue light exposure and proper full spectrum exposure from the sun is very important. Serotonin.
Can we just stick there for a minute? Because I'm a big advocate, and I talk about this actually on my crypto channel a little bit, where I go into more personal stuff, that I love 20 or 30 minutes of the day, every day, just sitting in the sun and gazing into the sun as it goes down. And I just feel that the sun is so essential for just nourishing your body. And I think like a lot of the things that the government, that the man in inverted commas, they tell us to keep away from these things, don't they? Like wear UV protection, stay out of the sun, don't go near weed, stay away from fatty food and eat sugar and shit like that. The sun just seems to be another thing on a long list of stuff that we're told to sort of stay away from, that I think is deadly important to us, right?
Yeah, the sun's dead. The sun's deadly, but Wi-Fi and Tylenol and low fat, high carb diets are all safe.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Like there's studies I've seen that the increase of skin cancer goes up the farther you're away from the equator. Well, that doesn't make much sense because the UV index is higher the closer you are to the equator. So you would think by conventional logic, the higher the UV index, the more you're going to burn. So the more that you're going to have skin cancer, but that's not the case.
Interesting.
So it's just crazy how we're told that sun is evil, but the human race has been in the sun since the dawn of man.
Yeah.
And people weren't dropping dead from skin cancer.
Mm.
So there seems to me that, mass numbers that they are today, So it seems to me that there has to be some sort of problem. I mean, I myself was always taught that. I remember when I was a kid, I played outside the sun and I felt good in the sun. When I became a young adult, I never went out in the sun. I played a lot of video games.
And you feel like shit.
I was, I hung out with my friends, and that's when I got sick. That's when I got H. pylori. That's when I had my own gut health issues with silent reflux and with anxiety and everything. Now, since it's the summertime, in the past 2 or 3 years, I've been getting sun. I go out during solar noon for 20 to 30 minutes a day. It's interesting how now when I'm grounding out in the sun, I put my bare feet on the ground, the ground with the Schumann resonance of the earth, and I'm getting sun. It's funny because my partner Titus at Fix Your Gut, he'll call me during the day and we'll be talking, and he'll notice that when I'm doing that, I'm super chilled and relaxed. I'm not my normal manic self. It's interesting how my health has improved and the health of my family has improved by just getting out and getting sun. Like that's the one thing I can stress the most out of all the podcasts that I go on. You could do that for free, people. It doesn't cost you any money.
Yeah.
It's just to go out and get proper sun. When you first wake up in the morning, if it's not too terribly cold, go outside. First thing you do, open up your window, let the sun hit your face for a few minutes, let the blue light, and the UVA and the IR radiation, depending on, what time of day it is. It could be UVB if you get up in the middle of the day. But, getting that first start to produce serotonin properly, get your circadian rhythm started properly, try to get some midday sun for the UVB. The closer you are to the equator, the closer it is the summer, the more likely you're going to make more vitamin D from the UVB exposure. And then, getting a little bit of sun at night, a little bit of IR right before the sun goes down, try to, take 30 minutes out of your day. And what it can do for your health is astronomical.
Can I just go back to something you said there as well, John?
Yeah.
That you take your shoes off and you feel the grass and stuff under your feet. Doesn't that feel great? And it's kind of like, oh man, I'm so glad you said that, because I do that all the time. I go for a run every day around the park, and sometimes when I'm finished, I'll just take off my sneakers, my trainers, and I'll just like rub my sort of feet and my toes in the grass. And I think that our skin is so rarely in contact with, and I don't wish to get too woo-woo on this, but it's very rarely in contact with Mother Earth, is it? Have you ever laid back in the grass, with your t-shirt off, and you feel the grass on your back and, on the soles of your feet? Like I say, there's something to that, isn't there? There's definitely something to that. It's a connection, isn't it? There's definitely something there.
Very much so. I mean, they've done studies of heart rate variability, and your heart rate going in more coherence, the proper beats, proper distance between the heart, heart rhythm becoming more in line and being more relaxed. They've done studies of people grounding, of people doing better coherence. You've probably heard of heart math, which is partnered with NASA astronauts and stuff like that, and government to try to get your heart into coherence. Try to get that proper, relaxed heart rhythm. Your resting heart rate. And so there is some science behind grounding. And some people say it's, the body, going with the Schumann resonance of the earth. You're discharging a lot of electricity that we build up in our modern world. Because we are electrochemical beings. Our heart, we produce our own electromagnetic field. Every living creature who has a heart that beats does. So we come in contact with all these other electromagnetic fields now more than we did previously, in the past, through the modern lives that we live in, through the use of electricity and Wi-Fi and, cell phones and stuff. But our body grounds, we discharge a lot of that negative, electricity that we build up. And it really makes a difference. I mean, when I do it, you can measure it. Like most people have a Samsung phone or an Apple phone, and they can measure. There's an app you can use. Like, for example, I use a Samsung app to measure stress, which measures coherence. And I'll do it when I'm in the sun and grounding, and I'll have very low stress. It'll be in the dark green, and it's probably the lowest it's going to be for me, except for maybe right before bed, that it's going to be the whole entire day. And we just don't do that. We don't take the time out of our busy days to take care of ourselves. A lot of us are just running ourselves into the ground, and for what? You're not helping yourself. You're not helping your family. But you could just take this, 30 minutes or 45 minutes when you can. There's going to be some days when it's cloudy. There's going to be some days when it's raining. In the winter, it'll be a little bit difficult to do it because of the weather, depending on where you live, because of being cold and everything. But most people, if they took the time to do this, their health, my mood, I was never a depressive person because of my genes. My genes favor more anxiety than depression. I have a catch-all methyltransferase mutation, for example. So I have more higher amounts of dopamine and epinephrine, which make me more of a type A, nervous personality. But I noticed that in the sun, when I'm making all that serotonin, and then I go to bed at night in a very dark room, the serotonin is being methylated into melatonin. And that's when I'm sleeping all through the night, lucid dreaming how we're supposed to. Because any blue light that we get exposed to during the night, it's like looking out. Your brain thinks that you're staring out in daylight. We're bathed in blue light from our cell phone screens, and there's different, devices like Twilight you can put on your phone, or Flux you can put on your computer, or Iris, to reduce the blue light. But we're exposed to all this toxic light, and it stops melatonin production. It burns up DHEA in the eye. It harms mitochondrial function. The light that we love so much, that we're so thankful to have, is poisoning us. And Dr. Jack Kruse talks a lot about that.
I think it's getting harder and harder for so many reasons just to get yourself to fall asleep. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way. I know I am. And this is probably a big part of it, is that, there's probably a million factors, but I think more and more with the pace of technology in your life and information, you've got to, you're the master of your own body. You've got to take that and put it upon yourself to find ways to fix that other than just pills,
Yeah, I've got a great thought experiment about this, Willie. Right, isn't it funny that you'll spend an inordinate amount of time at work working for your boss, right? And you'll try and improve the company. You'll try and, even though the company's not yours, you'll try and please your boss and try and take the company forward, that you're working for. In your home, you'll try and improve your home, and you'll paint it and you'll make it beautiful. And if the roof's a bit fucked, you'll fix the roof. And if there's damp coming through your floor, you'll fix it. Your car, if your car's a bit knackered, you'll clean it, you'll wash it and everything. But what about your body? This meat vehicle that you walk around in all day, every day, people don't give a fuck about it. It's the most important thing, and people will spend inordinate amount of time on all these three things that I mentioned: car, home, job, but no amount of time improving their body and working on their own meat vehicle.
I know, and I think for men, part of it too is I'd add sleep into that too. Like we don't even give sleep the time of day. We don't think about how important that is, because it's just so much about grind, capitalism. Accomplish those 3 or 4 things you just mentioned, and for some reason it seems like we just put our body and our temple, it just takes a back seat. What do you think, John?
100% agree. It's sad that most people, if you're having trouble sleeping, it's easy as getting a little bit of sun throughout the day. You can easily eat your lunch outside. Most people can if they work an office job. There you go. You're going to get sun. Taking maybe some magnesium supplementation. I wrote an excellent blog of magnesium on Fix Your Gut. Most people are deficient in magnesium. About 80% of Americans are. It's very important for relaxation and for sleep and for production of melatonin.
Yeah, John, just to stay on magnesium, I'm sorry, I really don't want to interrupt your thought, and please keep on with the thought, but I take magnesium every day now. I heard Clive DeCarlo again on on Greg's podcast, the HigherSide Chats, and he said that everybody's deficient in magnesium, and it's so important for people to relax and de-stress, right? They give it to heart attack victims, they give it to pregnant women, right, to relax them. So magnesium's a big one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, carry on,
Very
John.
much
I'm so
that's-
sorry.
I mean, that's why. No, you don't have to apologize at all. Yeah, I mean, I you're 100% right. I mean, I've taken magnesium myself for years. I take 800 milligrams a day.
Wow.
I know it depends on the person, but I mean, I take 800 milligrams of magnesium malate. The more stress you're under, the more magnesium you might need, the more you weigh, you may
Yeah.
need.
And it helps you go to the toilet, right? It helps you go to the toilet.
Yes, it does keep your bowels regulated. I mean,
Yeah.
I could spend hours talking about why magnesium is so important and why it's so important. I mean, for all that it does for the body, it does so much. But I mean, if you supplement it with magnesium, if you get sun, if you turn maybe your Wi-Fi off at night if possible when you go to bed. I know it may be difficult if someone lives in like a apartment, for example. You sleep in darkness. Most people do these things. And maybe if they went on a lower carb diet, like Perfect Health diet or, stuff like that. If you did these things, majority of people won't have sleep issues. I've coached people, I've got a lot of experience in my own personal life, my family members just doing those things. The sleep issues disappear. You don't have to rely on Lunesta, the non-benzodiazepines, which are just as addictive as benzos and also have cancer risks. You don't have to realize on these drugs if you just do these simple things. If you took 30 minutes out of your day to get sun when you can and sleep in darkness and took magnesium supplement, I mean, majority of people that are listening right now,
And a probiotic, right?
Well, the thing about probiotics, we'll talk about that. I think for most people, you should try to get your probiotics from food.
Okay, interesting.
Now, some people won't. Some people will need to supplement probiotics depending on their need. There's certain strains that are associated that may help positively for mood, and there's certain strains that may help more with different digestive issues. But for most people, you want to feed your gut a very diverse diet that's in season of locally what you can find that's of good quality. You want to get in about anywhere between 50 to 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. And you want to eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of local fiber. And you want to take a lot of probiotic foods in.
What is a probiotic and what does it do?
Okay, so probiotics are pretty much symbiotic bacteria or microorganisms that live on our body or in our body that they help us. They're not necessarily causing issues or not like opportunistic bacteria. Now, mostly any bacteria can become opportunistic under the right circumstances. The only ones that we haven't found a case of an infection yet are bifidobacterium, for example. But even your probiotics, some of them like Lactobacillus acidophilus, there's tons of Lactobacillus acidophilus infections in medical literature, So mostly any bacteria can turn opportunistic at any time or cause problems. But usually when we say probiotic bacteria, there's certain bacteria that are known that are found within our guts, found within our skin, found within the flora of our brain. Yes, I said brain. Our brain has its own microbiome. Every inch of your body has bacteria organisms in it. Your brain is no exception.
Yeah. John, there's 100 trillion bacteria in your body, I hear. And if all that bacteria was to leave your body... It's like 1.3 kilograms of bacteria, right, in your body. I mean, that is 2.2 pounds, I think. It's unbelievable. I mean, I am not I at all. I am we, It's like a symbiotic relationship, isn't it?
Very, very much so. I mean, you're more organisms than you are cells.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like one...
Thinking about that,
yeah. So, sorry, John. I was going to say, it's like 1 to 10, isn't it? I think there's one cell for every 10 bacteria, isn't there, in our body? And this is what we're dealing with. It's unbelievable.
I've seen numbers between 1 and 10, 1 and 8, 1 and 15. I mean, the numbers are all over the place. But we do know there's more organisms living on you and in you than there are cells that your body makes up, period.
Yeah.
And no part of your body is sterile. Your stomach's not sterile. Your bladder's not sterile. The womb isn't sterile. And your brain ain't sterile. Your brain has its own microbiome. And these microorganisms that are in your body that make up your microbiome, they produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine and GABA. You know, they produce, like, for example, 80% of your body's serotonin is produced by your gut. In the the microorganisms, bacteria that live in your gut for gut contractions, so that you can poop.
Yeah,
serotonin is a muscle contraction.
Because you have this thing called the vagus nerve, right? That runs basically from your throat to your colon, and it contains like 100 million neurons, right? More than your spinal cord or your peripheral nervous system, and it sounds like that your gut sends more information to your brain than your brain sends to your gut. I mean, our guts are, we hear this all the time, don't we? The second brain, and that's really true, isn't it, John?
Yeah, I mean, there's the second brain, which is your gut, but there's also the third brain, which is the microbiome within your brain. So you got your brain and your central nervous system. Then you got the microbiome in your gut, and then you have the third brain, which is the microbiome in your brain.
Hey, this is Mickey. Have you ever tried to look for a plumber, an electrician or painter for your home or office? Have you ever tried to rent a suitable place close to your office, or rent out your garage or spare room for extra cash? Are you looking to buy your dream home? It's time to make some home improvements with a new set of wallpaper to liven up your house or office? We've all tried, and it's difficult to find all these products and services online and in one place without losing track of web pages or websites that you spend hours and hours browsing and searching, not to mention the frustrations of having poor services, high fees and extra charges. They're just some of the problems we all experience one way or another in dealing with real estate. Well, now there is a solution that will revolutionize the way we solve all our real estate needs, and it's in one place and on one platform. Introducing Mux, M-U-X-E, the innovative platform for all our real estate needs. Mux uses blockchain technology for smart contracts with peer-to-peer transactions in a secure, decentralized environment. Mux has a full spectrum of products and services, from office, home furnishing, to professional services like interior designers, contractors, anything like property listings for your home, office or factory, whatever. Mux's objective is to provide all the needs for the real estate in one single platform, with Mux token at the center of that, being the token for all exchanges that will take place on the platform. The utility of the Mux token easily be applied from buying a home appliance to a brand new house. It's great. It's everything. Check out www.muxe.io. Hey, this is Mickey. Our next sponsor today is CCS, and this is Crypto Coin Start. This is a crypto community, and it's a global community for cryptocurrencies that allows you to sell products and services through the digital marketplace, or promote anything that is cryptocurrency related through the social feed within the community.
Yeah, the idea is that any ICO, any project, they can kind of create their own white label community within it.
Yeah, and this is especially relevant since crypto advertising has been kind of banned on Facebook and Google. So head on over there to CCS Crypto Coin Start. Hey, this is Mickey. I want to apologise for the sound issues today, particularly on John's channel. We had a few problems with the Zoom call, and we hope to get it rectified for the next caller. Apologies again. Right. Okay. This is really interesting. So this is the first time I've heard of bacteria in our brains. So is this a fairly new way of thinking, John? Is this accepted by is this accepted in science by the mainstream at the moment, or is this something on the periphery?
It's accepted by researchers. It's on the peripheral for neurologists and doctors, but it's accepted by research. It's been going on for about 10 to 15 years.
How can you affect the biome in your brain? Is food something that you can affect it with?
Yes. making sure that you don't have leaky gut, make sure you're getting sun, make sure you're getting enough omega-3 fatty acids, make sure you're drinking, clean water. Yes, you can affect your brain microbiome literally by affecting your gut. They work in tandem with one another.
Because in your gut you have this your gut lining, don't you? That's got these things called epithelial cells. I think they're called, right, John? And your gut microbiome keeps this healthy and keeps it. But basically, you've got this barrier, Willie. I'm looking at Willie now, and correct me if I'm wrong, John. But it's like a barrier between your gut and your bloodstream, and this barrier has got to let the good stuff through, like all the nutrients and all that kind of stuff, but it's got to keep the viruses and all the bad stuff from getting through. And your microbiome, your gut bacteria, keeps this epithelial lining very strong, right, John? It keeps the troops there and that first line of defense in order, right?
Yes, it keeps the immune system, and also, depending on what you eat, the mucosal barrier, which is above the intestinal epithelium, it'll be thicker in a healthier person, and it'll be more thin in a person who has leaky gut. But yeah, you're definitely right that there's junctions that let certain things in, keeps certain things out. For example, I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of the stomach flu, which is caused by the norovirus. The norovirus actually uses bile to trick your digestive system to increase the viral cells and draw more water into the bowel for diarrhea, so that you crap yourself, so it expels the viral particles and infects other people.
Wow.
So norovirus found a way to propagate itself through that way by changing the MMC, the migrating motor complex, or how the digestive system times itself.
These viruses are so clever, aren't they? They're so clever. Like, what's the one that Rogan always talks about? Toxoplasmosis, right? These kind of viruses that find.
That's a parasite. T. gondii.
Okay, that's different. Yeah.
T. gondii is a parasite. I was actually about to talk about that.
Go on then.
Because T. gondii is found in the brain and seems to be the causes of schizophrenia, rage disorder, and as well possibly as gender dysphoria could play a role in that too as well.
Gender dysphoria. There's a trigger word, right? Right.
Yeah. There is some literature out of India that says is a possibility. I just think it's something that needs to be studied more. And I don't necessarily think there's necessarily a wrong thing of just studying it to see if there is a link to T. gondii. Yeah. I mean, we know T. gondii in men who have very high testosterone, for example, like the Brazilian soccer players that Joe Rogan talks about. It makes them very aggressive. It gives them almost a rage disorder. Where in apparently men that have low testosterone, it can cause possibly gender dysphoria.
Wow. Okay.
It's controversial, but there is some research.
Well, as you may know, we're all here sat in Bangkok at the moment, and we have a very large population of transgender people, ladyboys here. So that might be something worth looking at over here to see if there's some link there. I think especially with the sort of hygiene over here, it's good. The hygiene's very good, but it's not as good as in the UK. Jimmy, you're about to talk for the first time. What you got to say, buddy?
Anybody who says lady boys, I'm in. I'm joking, by the way. No, but I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, we've definitely got a population here where we could do a study in inverted commas. Yeah. No, it's been fascinating. I've said nothing this interview, and I like it that way. I'm sat here, I'm learning, I'm absorbing, and I've got some questions for John at the end. But you guys continue, please.
Well, let's carry on then, John. So you're at the Brazilian soccer players, T. gondii, and yeah.
So we know T. gondii can affect the brain. That's why it's been implicated strongly in schizophrenia. That's actually becoming a mainstream argument. Women actually have protection against T. gondii to some degree. I mean, that's why pregnant women were told not to change cat boxes, because that's usually how we get T. gondii.
Yeah.
The thing about Toxoplasma gondii that's so interesting is apparently for evolution of the parasite, of how it learned is it originally infected rats. Rats were the main carrier of it, and rats actually play dead the parasite would drive the rats to play dead so that cats would eat the rats or make them docile so that cats could catch them to be a bigger host. Okay, there's actually a theory that cat domestication didn't come from human beings treating cats, nicer and keeping them as pets and feeding them and stuff like that. It was more actually that toxic plasma gondii was trying to find a bigger host.
Oh, wow.
That's insane.
It actually domesticated the cats so that it could spread to humans.
Oh, man, you just blow my mind.
I'm looking at my two cats way differently now.
Yeah.
So women, in schizophrenia, men are more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia than women. So there's a possibility that if it is caused by T. gondii, which it's actually becoming mainstream now, and you'll see a lot of actually mainstream publications and talking about it, and neurologists talking about it, that if it becomes dormant in the brain for years and it triggers these immunological responses that start triggering a change of the structure of the brain and how neurotransmitters are expressed by both the neural cells and the microbiome of the brain itself, the T. gondii itself, changing the microbiome of the brain and causing more dopamine type issues and more schizophrenic type thinking, actually leading eventually to schizophrenia. So it's really interesting that a single parasite could lay dormant in the brain for years and eventually cause schizophrenia. A male child can get introduced to it through their cat box at the age of 8, and then 22 they're schizophrenic.
Wow. Unbelievable.
John,
there's probably some genes that play a role in it too as well, but
John, how did you get onto gut health? How did that become your go-to subject?
I got sick.
I
got sick with gut issues. I had silent reflux, and none of the doctors could help me out of it.
Yeah.
What did they tell you to do? And did you just go rogue on the internet, do a bunch of research, read? What was your process about getting deep on that?
They told me pretty much just to take a proton pump inhibitor and eventually I'd get better, and that doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
Even the medical literature shows it does nothing with silent reflux.
And PPIs kill your gut bacteria as well, right, John?
Yeah, they also deplete magnesium. It changes the stomach microbiome. It depletes B12 as well. Proton pump inhibitor decreases testosterone.
Yeah, recently...
proton pump inhibitors...
Sorry, John. Yeah, recently I got married a couple of months ago, and around that time I think I was a little bit stressed out, and I had a little bit of acid reflux, so I was taking omeprazole, and I started to get really stressed out, and more anxious and more nervous, and I think it was the PPIs that did that, because as soon as I stopped taking the PPIs and started taking more probiotics and working out a bit more, I felt miles better. So I'm sure the PPIs were partly.
Sorry to be the definitions guy. What is a PPI?
A proton pump inhibitor. So it's like antacid.
It's antacin. Is that a PPI? Because that's what I've been taking the last couple of months.
Yeah. John, if it's an antacid, it's probably a PPI, right?
Maybe there's different types of antacids. Proton pump inhibitors, how they work is they stop the proton pump of the stomach to be able to produce stomach acid. It works as an enzyme inhibitor. Where most of your antacids, like sodium bicarbonate or calcium carbonate, like Tums, they just buffer the stomach acid. Where proton pump inhibitors cause the stomach to actually stop producing acid.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because I felt terrible. So sorry, John, I cut you off again. So Willie was asking how you got onto this, and you were saying that, you had some health issues yourself, and that they were prescribing you the PPIs and.
Yeah, so it wasn't working, and I decided to take my health in my own hands with a lot of people that I've talked to have done, and that's the best thing anybody can do is, don't take my word for it. Go research on your own and try to, back up either what I'm saying, or if I'm wrong, definitely tell me. I mean, I've been wrong before. I used to think colostrum was a bogus supplement that didn't do anything, and I've changed my opinion on it and other things too as well. But yeah, I mean, so I started looking through the literature and started reading and started learning about natural health and conventional medicine and stuff. And I've read I don't know how many books, and over thousands of research papers and stuff like that. And just decided to make it my life's work. I mean, I met my partner, Titus Wilson, who's part of Fix Your Gut, and Jason Cooper from the Bulletproof Boards. And I helped Titus' sister. She had a very rare disease where she was born without a corpus callosum and was dealing with seizures and stuff like that. And she's alive today. And she's hopefully very soon going to be on no medications.
Wow.
So yeah, Titus definitely helped me. If it wasn't for him, I'd be running like John Brisson at blogspot.com. So I just read everything I could get my hands on, and I made myself better and tried to make better the people around me and try to help clients and stuff like that.
That's such a fascinating story.
For years.
Just like you once you get deep into any subject that you become an expert on, you realize that like the commonly held opinions there's so many fallacies there. So it's interesting too that you're able to become, guru, you might not like that word, but quote unquote expert in the field just by just a true deep dive over time, going super deep on it. And now how do you make your, if you don't mind me asking, how do you run your business? You offer like consulting services. Obviously you do podcasts and stuff like that. What are your days like?
My days are answering emails, consulting people. I write blogs. I've written over 200 blogs for Fix Your Gut. I'm trying to finish up my second book, Fix Your Mitochondria. I'm also a stay-at-home father, so I'm taking care of both my daughter and my son when he gets out of school. I'm doing Fix Your Gut full time now.
Nice.
Still listening to much podcasts and reading as many books as I can get a hold of and papers and everything. I've never stopped learning. Because it's extremely important to learn. The best that you possibly can. You want to keep up with the modern literature and everything. And been doing fairly well. I mean, Fix Your Gut. It could always be better. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I made $40,000 last year.
Nice, awesome.
That's great.
Hopefully, I want to make a living. I've always wanted to help people. I mean, if anybody emails me, listening, I just email me. I'll send you a book for free. I know what it is to be ill. I know what it is to have people that are sick. And I just don't want people to be ill. I get it. If I can help out anybody. I mean, I do want to make a living, but I didn't get into this to make a living.
Those intentions probably help you make the living. Yeah.
Yeah. John, so how can our stomach bacteria get out of whack? I mean, it starts at birth, right? If we get pulled out by cesarean section and we don't get covered in the sort of vaginal juices, it starts that early, right? That at birth, we've got. Mother Nature's pretty. It's got things sorted out, right? And when we start messing with Mother Nature, that's when things start to happen. Yeah. So there's all sorts of things, isn't there? Like yeah. Go on, John.
No, I was going to speak. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, yeah. I mean, there's studies that show that sadly, all my children were born by cesarean section, but there are studies that children who are born with C-section have greater like staph and strep amounts in their gut bacteria and less lactobacillus and bifidobacterium because they're touched by hands, even by gloves, and that's where staph lives is on your hands and in our nose, and some in our gut too, depending on the person. So yeah, I mean, just right then and there, if you're born by C-section, you're already set at a disadvantage just by that alone. I mean, the vaginas and the birth canal are full of flora. There's been studies of, I guess not to get too graphic, men and women who've done cunnilingus and it affecting their microbiome. And some in a positive light if the woman's or is healthy, and negative light if, I guess, her microbiome wasn't healthy.
Yeah, John.
But yeah,
It's so funny you say that. We had this exact discussion on one of our podcasts 2 or 3 episodes ago when we were talking about going down on a woman, and the scent kind of it's almost I think it's evolutionary.
It's telling you something.
Yeah, it's telling you something, and it's kind of really sort of base. It's kind of evolutionary, that smell. It's like, don't go there or don't go there. And yeah, I think you're dead right. That, yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize is the vagina has its own microbiome. I mean, it's got a lot of lactobacillus down there, which could be healthy depending on how healthy the vagina is. And I mean, the penis has a microbiome too. If anybody's going down on a male, you're going to get some, but it's a little bit different for a woman. There's a lot more bacteria colony-forming units in the vagina than there is in the penis. But yeah, I mean, when we're exposed, like, there's no place really in the human body that's sterile. So, like you mentioned, even from birth, I mean, the child will get certain things from their mother in the womb, like bacteria, their own microbiome. They'll get heavy metals from the mother, like if the mother has mercury amalgams, they're going to get some mercury distribution. Chemical distribution too, possibly like bisphenol A and everything. So, our mothers sadly do give their toxic load to their children to some degree. And it starts from there, and then, depending on how healthy the mother is, and then it goes from the birth process, where if you're C-section, you have more staph and strap and less lactobacillus. And then you go get your first vaccination, which is the Hep B vaccination, which there's no need for that, unless, a child's born to intravenous drug-using mother. There's no chance that my son, for example, is going to get hepatitis B because, for one, the only 2 main ways of getting Hep B in the modern world is through anal sex and through intravenous drug use, and none of my children, it's going to happen to them.
Not until they're 18 anyway.
It's the first vaccine. Yeah, so it's the first vaccination, that they get.
It's crazy.
And then from there, that's like the immune system, and it's just crazy. It's crazy how as soon as we, even in the womb, or as soon as even we come out the birth canal, or we don't come out the birth canal, we're pulled out. Our bodies are an insult, pretty much. They have been somewhat throughout history. I mean, hell, even the ancient cultures were exposed to lead and cadmium and mercury. But it seems maybe today in our modern world now we're exposed more than things that we have in the past. Unless you want to go to the ancient cultures like Atlantis and Lemuria, that maybe this technology existed beforehand. Too as well, if you want to go, in the different timelines and everything. But
do you think
it's
that?
interesting.
Sorry, do you think that the children today are over vaccinated? Oh, sorry. Where do you stand on the whole vaccination, over vaccinated, that whole thing? Is that a worthwhile conversation?
Yeah. Go ahead, Willie. You broke up there for a minute.
Okay, I was just asking about the vaccination debate. Vaxxers, anti-vaxxers, very hot button. It's not something I've dipped deep into. I imagine I'm just kind of looking for your take on, do you think children are over-vaccinated?
I'm not necessarily against vaccinations. I'm not necessarily an anti-vaxxer, but I'm not necessarily a pro-vaxxer either. I'm kind of like in the middle. That's why people hate me, because I do think vaccinations probably served their purpose if they were more clean and not full of a crap ton of adjuncts like, MSG and thimerosal or anything like that, and I think they can be done correctly. And I do think that children are way more over-vaccinated than they should be. There's certain vaccinations that they should not be given.
Yeah. It could be spread out, can't it, a bit more?
Yeah, I think it can be spread out. There's many different books that you can read on vaccinations. There's many different ways to take it. I think that, like, for example, the Gardasil vaccination is complete horse crap. There's hundreds of different human papillomaviruses, and the Gardasil vaccination has a lot of side effects. So I would never give my daughter Gardasil, for example. My son, Holden, my first son, he was vaccinated, but he didn't get them all. There were some that I didn't necessarily agree with, like rotavirus or varicella or poliomyelitis. But I do think that some vaccinations, for example, and it is a personal choice if done correctly. For example, mumps for males may be beneficial because mumps, if a male does get mumps, like my son, if he would have got mumps, it could lead to sterility. But I think vaccinations are a personal choice. I don't think they ever should be forced upon someone. And I'm never going to be upset at someone who did not get their children vaccinated. I would actually be a little bit more angry at someone who blindly got their child all the vaccinations, all the recommended schedule, you know. And my son Abel, he was not vaccinated actually because they were afraid it may harm his immune system, ironically enough. And my daughter, she is not either. So it really, the debate, that's the thing is there's no intellectual honesty in the debate of vaccinations. You know, anti-vaxxers will call me a vaxxer because I believe that vaccinations, if done correctly, could be beneficial. And vaxxers would call me an anti-vaxxer because I do believe that most of the vaccinations that are given in their current form do more harm than good.
Yeah, but it's like all these things. It's grey, isn't it? There's so many shades of grey. It's not black or white. And I think it's so many of these things, John, are like that, aren't they? It's not one or the other. It's somewhere in between. It's somewhere in the middle.
And then when you have that debate on the internet, it becomes like an identity thing, you know, the anti-vaxxers versus the vaxxers. You're one of us or you're against us. And it's funny for you, John, it sounds like you're an enemy of both sides.
Yeah. I mean, I get called, well, you're in the natural health field. How in the hell can you believe in vaccinations? You know, and then I get vaxxers saying, you know, to me, how dare you question that polio is the cause of poliomyelitis? You know, I mean, I actually think that most cases of polio were actually just bacterial or viral meningitis. I mean, as far as like, for example, permanent damage, like you think of FDR in the wheelchair, the FDR may not even had polio actually. It's only 0.5% of the cases. You know, so that's like statistically insignificant. Most people who come in contact with polio, they're asymptomatic. They never knew. We did a live stream, Jason Hooper and I did on vaccinations. You can find it on YouTube under Jason's channel that we talk about vaccinations. And we talk about, and I think for most people, if done correctly, a few vaccinations could be beneficial. But the problem is it's so controlled by the pharmaceutical companies, and the preparations are crappy. And for example, they used to use the old pertussis, the attenuated bacteria vaccination, which seemed to be safer than them injecting endotoxin into people. Now they inject pertussis endotoxin into people. It could be if they made me the head of the CDC and they were like, or the FDA, and they were like, okay, you can get a team together and you can produce clean vaccinations. I think it could be done. I think it could be a benefit to mankind. But the way that it's done now, and the additives to the vaccinations, like formaldehyde and stuff like that, they use to keep the vaccinations, so they don't have, like, I understand why they put formaldehyde in it. They do it as a preservative to keep bacteria and other stuff growing in the vaccinations. Like you wouldn't want to inject a contaminated vaccine in somebody, but there probably could be safer things you could inject into people that would work better than the formaldehyde. Okay. Maybe not, I don't know, but I mean, I think they could probably come up with something better. There's an antimicrobial agent they can inject into somebody. But it's just funny how the vaxxers are all like, they're all 100% safe, which is complete utter horse crap. And then the anti-vaxxers say they don't work at all, they have no efficiency, which is bull crap too. So I think there's probably somewhere in the middle that could be reached. Now, will that ever be reached in our modern world? I sadly doubt it.
Yeah, and certainly not in this social media age where people pick sides. But John, I'm just there's a couple of questions I want to ask you. Can you tell me about the link between HIV and AIDS and bacteria? I heard you mention that on Greg's show, and I found that really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, most people know of HIV as just being like a common retrovirus, you know, that may be ubiquitous in nature, that a lot of people may be exposed to it or somebody asymptomatic to it. it seems to me, there's research to show it, that the parasite Entamoeba histolytica seems to be the main carrier vector of HIV, as well as possibly being the one that increases its virulence to cause the condition known as AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
So it would appear to me that Entamoeba histolytica may actually be what we know as AIDS, maybe the cause of AIDS, or it can make HIV become more virulent to become symptomatic to turn into AIDS. And there's enough studies to show that to be the case. And actually, the researchers, conventional researchers, they admit that. They just throw up their hands and go, well, there's a link, and there's a really strong link, but... And they just leave it at that.
Yeah. So is this about the gut microbiome as well? Keeping that healthy is that? I'm not saying can that prevent AIDS, but is that an active kind of measure against the progression of the illness at least?
Well, if I had HIV, or we're trying to keep myself from getting HIV, I would have a parasitical test, a PCR test, and stool test for Entamoeba histolytica. And if it turns out to be positive, then I would, tackle the parasite either conventionally or naturally. But yeah, I mean, technically, in theory, there's two things that a person can do really to prevent against, well, actually three things really to prevent against HIV. It makes sense. Those three things are as follows: is one, try to avoid blood transfusions, because Entamoeba histolytica can be transferred through blood transfusions. So that's one. Two, try not to have anal sex if all possible. Not necessarily giving anal sex, but receiving anal sex tends to cause issues with the colon, which could lead to, if you do have Entamoeba histolytica, can cause it to proliferate and to get into the bloodstream. And if you do have the retrovirus, maybe turn HIV into AIDS. And the third thing would be, intravenous drug use. That would be something that I would not recommend either.
Safe to say.
Right. Okay. So all our listeners there you go. They're the three things. and John, one more question as well,
but it does revolve around that parasite, though.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and you don't hear anything about that in the mainstream news, do you? That this parasite, I don't know. I mean, when I heard you on Greg's show the other week, that was the first time I'd ever heard of this link. So it's not out there, is it? This information.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the studies, I mean, heck, as much as like Wikipedia, you can Google it and go to the Wikipedia page, and it even talks about risk factors as Entamoeba histolytica being on there. Now, if you look at the studies, they'll say, well, if you look at the Wikipedia, they say, although it's unclear whether there's a causal link, studies indicate a higher chance of being infected with Entamoeba histolytica if one has HIV, and that talks about the virulence factors, too, of Entamoeba histolytica and HIV being maybe part of the pathology. But if you actually look at the studies, I mean, those are the studies that link the two. So, yeah, I mean, it's all there, even on Wikipedia, even though I don't like using Wikipedia as a source, but if anybody Googles Entamoeba histolytica, the link is there. You can actually look at the studies, and the studies are all sound. I mean, it's been there for a while. It's just interesting that they just never, they realized that there was a strong link, there was a strong link between it, and then they just didn't do anything. They were like, okay, well, there's a strong link. Let's stop looking here and treat AIDS with costly antivirals.
Amazing. And John, one last.
Is it possible that a person could...
Yeah, go on. Carry on, John.
I was going to say, is it possible that a person could reduce Entamoeba histolytica and bolster their immune system, and their AIDS could go in remission, or HIV never turn into AIDS? Yeah, it's possible. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say there's any studies or anything to prove that, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing, and thank you for that, John. One last question. Vitamin C. Can you tell us a little bit about vitamin C? I know time's getting away with us now, so I think we can kind of probably make this the last question, but I heard you discussing this again on THC, and I'm really interested in this subject. It's if used in the right way, it's very beneficial, right?
Yeah, I mean, I believe wholeheartedly in the work of Linus Pauling, who was a chemist, and he was also a Nobel Prize winner, who did a lot of research into orthomolecular medicine and dietary supplements, specifically vitamin C, and its use to help bolster the immune system, um, fight against viruses, as well as the fight against to help with cancer. And I do believe that it could be used, if correctly, when needed, as an antiviral agent and as an anti-cancer agent. Usually IV therapy in large doses, buffered vitamin C is used for cancer. And there are some main studies that say that it may help with cancer. So I do think that it's interesting. They say that it helps improve chemotherapy's efficiency with cancer.
Yeah.
That's how they kind of, they look at it that way. But yeah, I mean, most people are deficient somewhat in proper vitamin C. I mean, it's best to try to get it naturally, if all possible, through using camu on a daily basis. Drinking freshly squeezed citrus juices, or maybe use a camu powder or Pure Radiance whole food vitamin C. But if you're going to mega dose for colds or viruses or for cancer treatment, that's when you have to use L-ascorbic acid. That may be buffered like sodium ascorbate instead of the natural stuff if you're going to use it for those purposes. But yeah, when vitamin C is used correctly, it can definitely help with asthma. It can help with allergies. It's reduction of histamine. It's an antihistamine. You can combine it with lysine and vitamin C to reduce arteriosclerosis and reverse heart disease, combined with magnesium and vitamin K. I mean, yeah, I'm a huge proponent of vitamin C. I mean, so was Clive DeCarl, who's on THC2 as well.
Yeah.
He's a big proponent of it too.
So if we haven't got cancer, if we're just healthy like us guys, or fairly healthy, what would you recommend? Would you recommend taking it daily? And I know you just touched on there that the type of vitamin C is really important as well. This abscorb, what did you say, John? Abscorbate or something, right?
Well, I mean, if you're going to take it on a daily basis, I'd probably recommend doing some sort of natural vitamin C, like Pure Radiance vitamin C, and taking about 500 milligrams to a gram a day of those capsules.
Okay.
If you're going to use it for to reduce viruses, like if you have chronic fatigue syndrome, which is mostly caused by Epstein-Barr or cytomegalovirus, or if you're using it for herpes, or if you're using it for the common cold, and yeah, you want to use L-ascorbic acid, natural ascorbic acid.
Ascorbic acid, right.
Or sodium ascorbate. Sodium ascorbate, you want to use that for mega doses, what they call, like for example, if you're coming down with a cold, you might want to take, anywhere between 5 to 10 grams, depending on your weight. Pretty much every, you might take 2 or 3 grams every 30 minutes until you crap yourself. And then take a gram or two less than that. Do the whole vitamin C flush, as they call it. You can Google it and find a bunch of information on vitamin C mega dosing and flushing. But yeah, you would use the ascorbate for cancer through IV or through mega dosing to get help prevent against colds or flu, or to help with any viral infections.
Right, great. And before we sign off, John, I think my brother Jimmy, he's got a quick question to ask you, if that's possible.
Yeah, Jimmy, go ahead.
Cool, thank you, John. It's been pretty unusual, actually, for me just sort of sitting here. I'm absolutely amazed at the conversation, and it's been very, very educational for me, John. So thank you very much. And I'm not the most healthy of guys out there, and I dare say that I'm not alone. So I haven't really sort of got my head around what you guys have been talking about. Obviously, my brother and Willie know a heck of a lot more. So, for the ordinary layman like me, what would sort of the first 3 things, what would your first 3 initial recommendations be, for me to sort of put myself on this path and start to look at things a little bit more seriously than I am?
As far as what, as simple things that you can do.
Getting healthy.
Yeah.
I I would recommend sun, obviously, is number one. I mean, that's anybody can do that for free. Making sure you're drinking clean water, drinking purified water if possible, whether it's reverse osmosis or distilled water. Drinking more water. Most people don't drink enough water as it is. And I have a blog on water on Fix Your Gut. Maybe eating less refined carbohydrates and avoiding fortified carbohydrates, especially with iron, like they do in the United States, because that could be a cause of celiac disease with glyphosate, the pesticide glyphosate. So you want to avoid, a lot. I'm not going to say that gluten is the worst thing in the world, but modern wheat products are, with the amount of glyphosate that's in them and the fortified iron and folic acid and the high amounts of gluten that's in it and everything, that's the problem.
Excellent.
So yeah, if you can follow something like maybe like the Perfect Health Diet by Paul Jaminet, getting anywhere between 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates a day, eating more vegetables when you possibly can, eating more meat and more healthy fats like breast-fed butter and extra virgin olive oil and ghee and coconut oil and stuff like that. Just doing the little things, doing what you can. Put down the pastry for breakfast in the morning and instead, maybe some hard-boiled eggs and a little bit of bacon, maybe a little bit of fruit like some blueberries and stuff like that, or some melons. Just doing simple things like that. It's about repetition. I don't expect people to be perfect every day because Lord knows I'm not. I mean, hell, I had Chipotle for lunch, and so, it's about doing your best when you can. And no one expects anybody really to be perfect, especially in this modern world. I mean, heck, it's 12:17. In per circadian rhythm, I should be in bed. But I mean, something. No one's perfect. And that's not what I expect anybody to ever be perfect. I myself am not. But just trying to do better things that you can more often will improve your health over time.
Yeah, small steps.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah, that's the most thing that you can do.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great way to end this, John. And thank you so much. It's been such an inspiration having you on, and you're a true warrior against the this kind of mainstream medicine. And I've learned a hell of a lot today, John. I'm sure Willie and Jimmy.
Fascinating.
Yeah, thank you so much for the 101. Hopefully, sometime in the future, we'll get you back on, or whatever for 201.
So, John, where can people find you, mate? If they want to come and find out more about you, where can people get hold of you?
Yeah, they can find me on fixyourgut.com. My book's also on Amazon on Kindle, and I also offer coaching too as well. And I definitely, want to thank you guys for having me on. Mickey, Willie, Jimmy, and everything. And I definitely would. Anytime you guys want me back on. I don't necessarily have to talk about health. We can talk about conspiracy. We can talk about anything you guys want.
Cryptocurrencies.
Crypto. Anytime you ever want me on, just let me know.
Love it.
That's great.
I had a blast. And definitely thank you guys for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Cool, John. Take good care.
All right, John. I'm Mickey. You can find me at Crypto Mickey on Twitter. Where can they find you, Willie?
At Willie Delius.
And Jimmy, where can they find you?
They can find me on the streets of Bangkok.
We've been This Strange Life. Stick around because we're just going to give a couple of words about our sponsors as well. Thank you very much, John. Take care and see you later. See you next time. Peace. What a great show today, Willie, eh?
God, that was good. That was good fun. Quite educational and also a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. So be sure to look John Brisson up and go to fixyourgut.com. And we just wanted to round up our sponsors today, didn't we, Willie? And the first one is
Kaz Coin, Masternode Coin. We're a big fan of it. Check it out.
Yeah, it used to be Copyco, right?
Yeah.
And they've just rebranded to Kaz, and it's an online marketplace, and it's fucking awesome, and the developers cool as hell, and we love this project, don't we? And we vet all these projects before we let them advertise with us, so you can be sure that all these are great. The second project we're looking... Yeah, it's Mukes. So Mukes, so if you've ever wanted an electrician or painter for your home, or if you've ever wanted, to rent your a spare room out, or anything like this, it's kind of real estate centric, you can use the Mukes platform to do that, and you basically use the Mukes token to make all these transactions. So basically for all your real estate needs, it puts them all in one place. So that's Mukes. What's the next one, Willie?
Brick Block.
Brick Block, and we love Brick Block as well. So if you're not on the property market, right, and you want to own a slice of a prestigious property somewhere, or these ETFs, these future things, or these coin funds, you can basically have a piece of those and earn passive income. So you can go to brickblock.io and check those out.
Yes, and the ICO is going on as we speak, May 9th to 15th.
Started on May, yes, you've got to get in there quick, kids.
I think it's filling up.
Yeah, and last but not least, our final sponsor today is CCS, Crypto Coin Start. So in the face of these bans on cryptocurrency advertising by Facebook and Google, these platforms are becoming a lot more important, and you can go on there and advertise your ICO. You can advertise any kind of cryptocurrency products and services through this digital marketplace, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so that's it for today, and this has been This Strange Life. And
all right, guys.
We'll see you next week.
Adios.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.